Welcome back to Match B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman. This is part 6 of our 6-part series, and joining me are Brenda and Brian Newman. For 5 episodes, we built the puzzle. Who actually decides? Why enthusiasm misleads? How to read silence? How organizations make decisions? And how culture changes interpretation. Today we close the loop. How deals actually move from momentum to decision. Picture the deal everybody swears is at 80, maybe 90%. The champion is engaged. Procurement already asked for paperwork. 2 stakeholders joined the last call. Your rep updates the CRM, moves the stage, and says, "This should close this month." Then, delay. Then one more internal review. Then a new stakeholder appears out of nowhere and asks a basic question nobody thought was still open. And that's the painful truth. The deal didn't die. It just never reached a decision.
I want to stay on that 80 to 90% number because that's the number people love. It feels precise. It sounds responsible. But if you've got a verbal yes, active emails, maybe even "we're excited to move forward," how do you know that's real progress and not just very polite momentum?
Because closing is not persuasion. Closing is alignment. A deal usually does not stall because of price, or because somebody suddenly stopped caring. It stalls because 4 things are missing underneath the surface: alignment, clarity, ownership, and safety. People are not fully aligned on what they are buying. It is not clear who truly owns the decision. Risks are still floating around unresolved, and most important, the organization does not yet feel safe making the decision. Because closing is not persuasion. Closing is alignment. A deal usually does not stall because of price, or because somebody suddenly stopped caring. It stalls because 4 things are missing underneath the surface: alignment, clarity, ownership, and safety. People are not fully aligned on what they are buying. It is not clear who truly owns the decision. Risks are still floating around unresolved. And most important, the organization does not yet feel safe making the decision.
And in pipeline terms, that's where forecasts get polluted. The moment a rep hears, "looks good from our side," they advance the stage. Then the CRM says late stage, the manager reads that as commit, and suddenly a maybe has become this quarter's number. Stage inflation usually starts with one missing piece: evidence. If there's no confirmed decision process, no named owner, no date, no defined next step, that's not a closable deal. That's a well-liked opportunity.
Wait, well-liked opportunity is going to stick with me because that's exactly what many teams are carrying. So let me push this a little. If the champion is responsive, brings people in, says internally they're aligned, aren't we supposed to trust that? I mean, you can't interrogate every buyer like you're doing an audit.
No, and that's the mistake. You're not interrogating. You're de-risking a decision. A champion can be sincere and still not control the process. A stakeholder can show enthusiasm and still not sign off. A procurement conversation can happen before executive certainty exists. Those are signals. Useful, yes, but signals are not decisions. If one critical person is silent, if the business case means different things to different people, if legal is waiting on someone you've never met, the deal is not stuck at the end. It is incomplete in the middle.
I've seen this exact thing with forecast calls. Seller says, they love the demo. Fine. Who owns the internal approval? Silence. Legal is reviewing. Fine. Who asked legal to review? Silence again. We have next steps. Okay. What date, what meeting, whose name is on it? If those answers are fuzzy, the probability is fuzzy too.
So the verbal yes is not the milestone. The safe internal yes is the milestone.
Exactly. You don't close a deal. You build the conditions where a decision becomes safe. And if those conditions are missing, what you call progress is often just motion. That's the shift for this final episode. Exactly. You don't close a deal. You build the conditions where a decision becomes safe. And if those conditions are missing, what you call progress is often just motion. That's the shift for this final episode. So let's make this usable. The model is simple: the decision alignment framework. 4 conditions must exist for a deal to close. 1. Clarity. Everybody understands what they're buying and why. 2. Ownership. It is clear who is responsible for the decision. 3. Risk coverage. The meaningful risks have been surfaced and addressed. 4. Next step control. There is a defined next action with a date and an owner. If one of these is missing, you don't have a deal. You have momentum.
I like that it's brutally clean. But how does a seller test those 4 conditions without sounding pushy? Because this is where people overcorrect and start pressing too hard.
By asking decision questions, not pressure questions. For example, what still needs to be true internally for this to move? Who still needs to feel comfortable before we move forward? What could realistically delay this from your side? What would a clean next step look like? And maybe the most revealing one, if this doesn't move, what would be the reason? Those questions don't force a close. They expose whether a close is structurally possible.
And they improve forecast quality immediately. If a buyer answers, we still need finance, IT security, and our regional GM, that's not bad news, that's accurate news. The bad version is pretending those 3 people don't exist because the champion sounds confident on Zoom.
Let me give one full case. Late stage deal, strong champion, multiple demos, positive language all around. Seller thought it was basically done. Then the close date slipped. Why? The seller finally asked, who still needs to feel comfortable before this moves? Answer, operations and security had concerns, and the CFO still didn't understand the rollout risk. Nobody had said no. They were just not ready. So the seller changed approach, brought those silent stakeholders into separate conversations, clarified implementation in plain language, addressed the security concern directly, put ownership back on the buyer side. Who signs? Who approves rollout? Who manages onboarding? Then defined one clean next step. Decision meeting, specific date, named attendees. Deal closed. Not because the seller pushed harder, because the decision became safer.
So the turning point was not a better pitch. It was surfacing the hidden people, operations, security, CFO, and reducing uncertainty for each of them. That's a very different mindset from follow up until they sign.
Correct. And the common mistakes are almost always the same. Pushing for the close too early, trusting the champion alone, advancing stages without evidence, ignoring silent stakeholders, and assuming a next step exists because everyone ended a call politely. Politeness is not process.
Politeness is not process should be in every CRM. Because most companies do not fail because they lack meetings. They fail in the handoff from activity to decision. Lots of calls, lots of demos, weak conversion. That's an operating problem.
And that is exactly the lens we use at Match B2B. Not campaigns for the sake of campaigns. Structure. There's a setup phase, there's setup plus 3 months of activity, and there's commitment to outcomes. If targets are not reached, we keep working without payment until they are. Not as a slogan, as a reflection of how seriously we take alignment between activity, pipeline, and actual decisions. If your deals are getting stuck, go to LinkedIn, find me, Benny Fluman, and send me a message. Tell me where your deals are getting stuck, and we'll look at it together. Deals don't close when people agree. They close when the organization is ready to decide.